So we're going to move to the next part of today's discussion, creative spectrums, festivals as catalysts for cultural economies. I'm going to share a few quick opening remarks, and then I'm going to invite the panel on. Most of you already know, and we already established, India is the most populous nation in the world with almost 1.5 billion people. We are a very young nation with 24% under the age of 14. The market size of the creative and cultural industries is 36.2 billion. It employs 8.3% of the population, higher than any other developing country. It's the 8th largest exporter of creative goods globally and the 3rd largest among developing countries. And according to UNESCO, we have 40 World Heritage Sites, 6 creative cities, 111 folk arts, 9 classical dance forms. And in Juni's presentation that we didn't see, she had 35 cultural sites, 7 natural sites, and 1 mixed site. Given these impressive figures, it becomes evident that the heart of India's creative economy beats in its festivals. India is often called the land of festivals, naturally channels its cultural and creative synergies into these vibrant celebrations. The 2009 UNESCO Framework for Cultural Statistics categorizes festivals under performances and celebrations, further defining them as including all expressions of cultural events that occur locally and can be of informal nature. Let's look at some of the best practices. And in France, the Estate General of Festivals brings together professionals of the creative sector for a common good. An initiative in 2020 by the Ministry of Culture, 30 million euros in grants were awarded by the Ministry of Culture to festivals in 21. 30% of these proposals went to festivals. 20% of people in France attend a festival. The SOFEST study estimates that 6,000 festivals in France, including 4,000 music festivals. 70% of these festivals were created in 2000. The number of festivals in Netherlands grew by 2.3% last year to 1,236 festivals, drawing 26 million people. According to the Outdoor Arts UK, a 2021 study mapping project estimates 440 festivals across verticals of outdoor arts festivals to carnivals and light nights in the UK. British Council's Festival from India Needs and Insight report commissioned mapped almost 700 festivals from May till October of 21 in different parts of the country. You know, Sanjay already mentioned the Durga Puja statistics. I'm not going to mention it, but it was pulled again from our partner, Mapping the Creative Economy Around Durga Puja 2019. The Jaipur Literature Festival, dubbed as the greatest literary festival in the world, has evolved into a global phenomenon after 17 years, has hosted over 5,000 speakers, welcomed over 1 million book lovers worldwide, and now with several international editions has reached a remarkable audience of 25 million online. The Edinburgh Fringe, encompassing theatre, comedy, dance, and circus acts, remains one of the largest ticketed festivals in the world. In 2023, nearly 170 countries were represented, and 2.45 million tickets were sold and issued across 288 venues. The digital age, festivals are coming to the forefront, leveraging technology to expand their reach and engagement, pioneering new models of cultural dissemination and audience interactions. As we dive deeper into the broader implications of how cultural festivals have evolved into these economies of powerful economies of creativity, it is imperative to recognize the individuals who are at the forefront of these transformations. And this brings me to the task at hand. I'm delighted to invite our distinguished panel of experts working at the intersection of culture, community, and sustainable development. Please put your hands together to welcome our speakers, fine artist and honorary chairperson, Kalagora Arts Association, Brinda Miller. Festival Director, Jodhpur RIF, Divya Bhatia. Conservation Architect, Abha Narayan Lamba. Director, Serendipity Arts Foundation, Smriti Rajgarya. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You know, everyone sitting on this panel actually has been involved with AVID and been a true supporter in our journey over so many years. And I'm actually delighted to be in conversation with you all because of that. But thank you for all that you all do and being such champions and torchbearers of the arts and culture. I'm going to start with Brinda with the first question. Brinda, the Kalagoda Arts Festival has become synonymous with Mumbai's cultural identity. You know, it's been a privilege to be associated with you for over a decade and now as a member of the executive committee. You know, as you're going to be 25 years old soon, right? So as we approach the 25th anniversary, how has this festival's role in urban regeneration and supporting the local creative economy evolved since its early days in 1999?
So, Asad, I haven't turned 25. It's the festival.
I mean, you look it.
And yes, I don't know about the economy so much, I'll be honest, regarding the financial economy. But yes, definitely it has been one of the first of its kind. And I think I am extremely happy to say a lot of other festivals also began. Because of the Kalagoda Arts Festival, there have been so many other that have kind of come into the fray. And ABBA was in this festival thing right from the beginning, and I wasn't there when she came, but I joined. You were there later. Yeah. So was Divya, right? And I have to say that the purpose of this festival was something else, and it has become something else also. But that doesn't mean that our real main aim of this festival was to raise some funds for the restoration of the heritage buildings and all of that. And the festival has become the tail that wags the dog, actually. Because it wasn't meant to be like that, but yes, of course, there was another mandate that was to create art awareness and to create a sort of get attention for the kind of area it was. It used to be a dingy little place. And I have to say, over the years, at least, I feel responsible for making it what it is and to making it like a hub in South Mumbai. It's a very sought-after place. Lots of boutiques, lots of restaurants, a lot of offices who are right at the back. They still put their address down as Kalagoda. And I think it has become one of the real estate places in Mumbai to be in, as far as any commerce, any kind of action. A lot of young people who hang out there now, and it's. I remember it used to be dark, dingy, and somehow it's just happened. It has a sort of energy that really is in a way unprecedented, I feel. And it's one of the first of its kind that has created something, a big buzz. And it's really a big success. It's become iconic. We have come now, earlier people used to say, oh, it's so crowded, it's like this, it's like that. But now I think people say, oh, Kalagoda, can we be part of it? How do we be part of it? It's so amazing. So I feel extremely proud that we've kind of brought it to this level. A lot of passionate people who, like Asad as well, Abba, all of us, who kind of have put in so much of our time and our efforts and have made this into what it is. We all began as volunteers. We're still volunteers. After so many years, we are volunteers, which is and we love it. And I can say, I'm not speaking just for myself. I'm speaking for a very, very small, tight team. And here we are.
All right. Divya, the Jodhpur Rajasthan International Folk Festival RIF has been celebrating root music and supporting folk musicians since 2007. Now, how has this festival now in its 16th year contributed to the economic empowerment and the global recognition of Rajasthani folk musicians?
Yes, 17th year this year. Well, I have, as we speak, I have artists playing in Belfast, right? They were playing last night, they were there the night before, and they're playing tomorrow. The same artist played at Celtic Connections in the UK in January with one project, and another project of mine is being invited to Celtic Connections, which is I don't know if you know this, it's the world's largest winter music festival in the Northern Hemisphere. And they're playing there next January. Having said that, we were in Hobart for 2 weeks at a residency and performing there. And in July, we were at the Lincoln Center in New York, where the Lincoln Center had their first ever sunrise concert at 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning in the heart of New York City. And remember the night before that, the organizers were like, will you still perform if there's one person in the audience? And fortunately, there were about 80 people in the audience at 5 a.m. Now, why am I saying this? So whether it's the Edinburgh Festival or whether it's the Commonwealth Games in Australia or in Glasgow, we've taken artists all over the world, right? So somewhere, I think there has to be an acknowledgement that yes, there is something about this festival, about this work, that seems to be doing good. One of the things that didn't come up in the earlier panel, which I was very interested in, was actually livelihood. You know, it's a key aspect for the traditional musicians. I mean, for all the traditional artists. But let me just flip the coin a little bit and tell you that in 2007, when we started the festival, Jodhpur was a half-day destination. Because the airport was there, people would fly in, they would go to the fort, and then they'd go off to Jaisalmer. In 2010, because of the festival, it had become a one-night destination. And by 2013, it had become a two-night destination. And in 2021, when flights kind of started a little bit, Vistara's in-flight magazine, they do this section called Vista. And they choose a place, and they chose Jodhpur. And the calling card for that image was the festival, not the fort, you know. What am I saying? I'm saying, yes, of course. I mean, you've been talking about it earlier. The economic impact of festivals just cannot be ignored. Not at all. I mean, I don't want to say more now, but I just wanted to paint that little picture.
Creative tourism is something that we've been talking a lot about, and we'll go back to some questions on that later. Abba, you know, I joke, I call you the queen of conservation. You know, you've been responsible for restoring countless heritage structures all over India, which have become integral, somewhat like a blueprint to many of the arts and culture festivals happening. As Brinda rightly mentioned, you were one of the founding members or the champions of the Kalagor Arts Festival.
I feel really old now.
I mean, you started when you were very young. But how does restoration add to the revitalization and the creative economy? Share some of your thoughts on arts interventions and festivals, you know, your steps of the Asiatic Society, which...
See, I think in India, two things. We have very little cultural infrastructure. For a population of 1.4 billion, and especially if you look at a city like Delhi, yes, you have, you know, these kendras and the Sri Ram Center and other things. But Bombay, we are starved for open space, for cultural space. And in 1998, when we were 6 people sitting across over a cup of, you know, tea at with Mr. Sabawala. No, it was tea with old Mr. Sabawala, who said, I feel so heartbroken that my grandfather, who was Reddy Money Kawasji, he had given money for the construction of the Elphinstone College. And he said, every time I pass my grandfather's bust, I hang my head in shame. The place is dead after 6. There are drug peddlers and pushers, and we can do nothing about it. We were 6 delusionally optimistic people, and we said, okay, let's not. Government wasn't interested in it. There was, at that point, nothing like CSR in culture very strongly, you know, way back in 1998. And we said, hey, let's just do one thing. Let's add up all the square footage area of cultural sites around Kalakoda. And we came up with 1 lakh existing square foot area of culture, because we had NGMA, we had Prince of Wales Museum. It was still Prince of Wales and not CSMVS then. We had, you know, little pockets of galleries and Jahangir Art Gallery. And we said, let's just do one thing. Over the weekend, let's use up every kind of open space, footpaths, back of buildings, for culture. So I still remember I went to meet the the Minister of Culture, along with Mr. Jamshed Kanga and Mr. Sabawala, and we asked him only for one thing. We said, sir, we're not asking you for 1 rupee. We knew we wouldn't have got it anyway. We just said, could you pedestrianize Kala Ghoda and give us the parking lot for 2 weekends in February? And even the choice of February was as random as, oh, you know, December, Jan, people are out for Christmas, people are away to Alibag and Goa, February, they're back, it's still not too hot. It was as random as that. And I sketched out a little hand-drawn image of these 5 buildings and a trail around it. We published that as a little card. We put together all the calendar of events that was already happening at the Jahangir and just put them under one umbrella. And we got Ustad Zakir Hussain and his father to perform live in the parking lot, and we didn't charge a ticket. So what we said is, because this has to be completely democratic and open to all, if we don't charge a ticket, let's see who lands up. We had 10,000 people coming to hear them, and that set off this whole thing. We've literally we repurposed the steps of the Asiatic Library, the back garden of David Sassoon Library, the terrace of Jahangir Art Gallery. For the first festival, we had the Gundecha brothers doing a morning ragas performance. We had some of our open and start of paratha festivals. So they came out with a separate menu of Sham Benegal's favorite parathas, and Sham came for it, and Charles Correa's favorite parathas. So we all just improvised and we did jugaad, and then the next year onwards, we got Sangeeta Jindal and Brinda Miller to come in as well. So that jugaad grew into this, and full marks to Brinda for just carrying it through, because I can only think architecturally. So I said, okay, my job is done. I'm handing my baby over to you. But having said that, what we need to do as a country is the citizens need to do this jugaad, because if we keep waiting for every intervention to come down from the government, it ain't happening. So I'm throwing another ball at you guys. Last year we restored Bandra Station. And Bandra Station has become a selfie point, because people come and take their pictures. It's beautifully lit. But the last train stops running at 1:30. And between 1:30 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning, can you imagine a late night rock festival and repurpose the steps, the concourse of Bandra Station? There's a bridge that can be the viewing gallery, and take all the tracks and turn that into a music festival. Lily Pandya, Railways is your parent, body. Could we try something really as audacious? Because
you have the Supreme Court, this thing rolling up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, not that one. The pedestrian overbridge inside the station. So if we can just come up with some ideas like this. I know Serendipity does a beautiful job in Goa. We started, and I've done a lot of things like slightly on the side, which is not really my mandate. So Bikaner House, we were asked by Rajasthan government to turn the bus adda into the Chief Minister's office, and we sort of turned it really into a cultural center. And now we're working with Smart City Goa, where they asked us, we want our Smart City office renovated, and now that's going to suddenly have the Smart City office only 10%, and 90% hopefully going to Serendipity or cultural space. But I hope it becomes a cultural space for Goa, so let's all push for it.
We'll move to Smriti and talk about Goa. I mean, Serendipity is in its 9th edition. You're in your 9th edition. Congratulations on a fantastic festival. I mean, Goa's had a long legacy and history of a vibrant arts and culture. What chose you all to start off this wonderful festival in Goa, and how have you seen it grow and evolve, and how has it supported because it's about the cultural economies, the cultural ecosystem and the artists?
I think it was serendipity that we started the festival. We had a foundation that I started for Mr. Munjal. We were giving grants, and he was like, our country has so many people. This isn't going to cut it out. Like, how many grants can we give? How will we make impact, et cetera, et cetera. So he said, hey, Goa has infrastructure. He's a businessman. He thinks like a businessman. He said, infrastructure, flights, hotels. We can get people there. We should do Goa. I said, okay. He said, go to Kalangut, find a piece of land and do like a music thing there. So we said, fine. Went for a recce. Was really disheartened. I'm an architect. I've never practiced, but you can't pull an architect out of my DNA. We were crossing Panjim and we saw these beautiful heritage buildings called up Ranjit Hoskote. I said, Ranjit, can you help us with something? Goa so well. He said, there's a building called Idalkau covered in blue tarp, and I suggest you visit it. And that was the start of serendipity. We found the building, we spoke to the government. The government was very gracious. They call me to Goa very often, but otherwise I think they've been very polite. I don't think any government would have done what the Goa government has done for us to make this successful. And that's how we started.
Wonderful. I'm going to come back to you with some more questions. Brinda, the Kalagora has consistently attracted a diverse audiences, both local and international. Now, it's become a very significant festival also on a global stage. So how do you see Kalagora contributing to India's soft power, and what attributes of the festival you think is this growing international profile? Because you're now presenting many international gigs, which was supposed to be a local festival.
It was never meant to be a local festival. It's just so happened that I think a lot of consulates want to be part of our festival. So we have to thank them for this.
The French are here?
Yes, we've had the French a lot. We've had the Germans. We've had all of them, everybody. And we kind of have to thank them. I think they're also very grateful to us for kind of giving them a platform in Mumbai, because Mumbai never had that kind of patronage as compared to Delhi, where all the embassies had so much to offer, So that was one of the things. The other thing is now, I think Maharashtra also, the tourism department, they have kind of collaborated with us, and Anand Mahindra one day just said, would you like to collaborate with us, or can we collaborate with you? And he looked at me and I said, yes. So he said, yes, just like that. So I said, yes. So I realized that that was one opportunity to get also a lot of, tourists, foreigners, all of that. So to make it an international festival, it hasn't really, I feel it hasn't reached that international, it hasn't got that kind of exposure, international exposure that it deserves. So let's hope that that's the next thing that we can aim for with your help, Asad.
Mr. Patil was supposed to be here in the morning, and the Mumbai Festival, which was the second avatar of it, happened last year.
No, but I must mention one thing here is Shashi Bala is here from the BMC, and she has been instrumental, and I must thank her for kind of connecting us, and she's in charge of looking after UCCN, which is a UNESCO, because Mumbai is a creative city of films, and we collaborated, and the BMC presented the cinema section this year, and she's also just been for a conference, so I think to Portugal, right? So she is the sole person there who's really pushed this forward, and BMC and us have become...
Give us a round of applause for her.
Yes. And we've become partners. We've had so much grief over the years for permissions. We've had so much grief from everybody, but this, I think finally now we have kind of that hurdle is passed. And we are actually doing very well together. So I hope that we can speak to Lily and take that forward a little more.
I'm going to go back to Smriti. For Serendipity, the long-standing aim is to support emerging artists from the global from South Asia. In that context of the global art market, what are the innovative new strategies that you all have implemented to promote this? I mean, talk about your international.
Yeah, so it happened quite automatically. When we started the festival, we were very sure our focus was South Asia. We were very sure that we wanted to bring focus back to South Asia. To the extent that, in the first year, we did not send out any international invites. We wanted the people who were living in Goa and India to visit the festival to see what was happening in Asia. We didn't want an external buy-in at that point of time. And so that strategy kind of worked, because people got very intrigued with a festival that didn't really want to invite anyone from the West. And they were like, but why aren't they calling us? We've never paid for anyone's ticket. called any curator, any museum director to the festival. We have a huge delegation coming this year. We've started something called Serendipity Exchange for the Arts. I discussed this with Sanjoy in April, I think, and we've started the marketplace. And so, Asad, to answer your question is that every time we are given a problem about cultural economy, we make a project on it, which we don't know whether it will succeed or not. For example, with emerging technologies, we said, okay, what's the biggest question about what's going on right now was ethics and AI. Now, AI coming into India, into artistic practice is so slow that when you actually talk to people abroad, their impact is very different. So we started tying up with institutions like LACMA. We're doing a project with LACMA, with an Indian artist, developing South Asian collection of theirs into an AI project for Serendipity to address repatriation. So we take all the issues that are coming up, and then we try and develop a project to see whether it really works. I must say, all the projects we've done are incubators to see whether we find solutions to really critical problems. And though it looks like a lot of fun and dance at the end, but I think the intention is very different as we create these projects, and that's how the strategies come up.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Abha, you've worked on a range of projects, including Mumbai's very own cultural crown jewel, the Royal Opera House. Now, from a preservation and a conservation perspective, how do you balance that, preserving the historical authenticity to making these cultural spaces relevant to modern cultural needs?
Of course, the built heritage is important, and I think research is important. Otherwise, it doesn't retain its authenticity. So for the case of the Opera House, our first aim was to just make the building keep standing because it had been declared unsafe. It was on the verge of collapse when Maharaja Sahib Gondal, appointed me for this project. And I went to 5 different structural engineers, leading engineers, and they all rejected my proposal of joining the team because they said it's too risky. So yes, structural conservation is of course the most important. But then before we went into the building and looking at the fabrics and even the interior shell, we had to do a lot of research, and we kept looking at old photographs. We had a lot of old photographs of the outside, but not enough of the inside. And then serendipitously, I chanced upon a professor of theatre in Australia who had the first catalogue that was printed in 1916 when the Opera House opened, and it had black and white pictures of Opera House's interior, which showed the Baroque interior and not the Art Deco interior that had been seen for the last 30 years. And then my team and I, we went through 1,000 Hindi films to look for films that had Opera House in its scenes. And we found one extremely obscure film from the late 60s, which had Shashi Kapoor, Mumtaz, and Rajesh Khanna. And the climax scene was a chor police scene where the fellows are sitting inside the boxes. The galleries in the boxes had been demolished. And that got us to say, okay, eureka moment, that's what it goes back to. But yes, conservation needs to be based on authentic documentation. But we did not have air conditioning. We needed to bring the acoustics to an international level, and there Richard Nowell, who was a consultant to NCPA, was supremely helpful to get that. So it needs to be both bringing in the latest technology and of course, what's preservation.
Thank you for that. Divya, you mentioned all these collaboration, or are they collaborations, but all these artists who are performing all over the world. Are these cultural exchanges, do they collaborate with artists from another country? And what has that done for their creative practice, the Rajasthani folk artist practice?
What happens is if you have a particular, say, musical practice, say you're a sarangi player, folk sarangi player, and you may not speak the language, you may not speak English, and you may never really have interacted with a guitar player before. So you put a guitar player who doesn't speak your language with you, who's a jazz guitar player, and really there's a bit of a wall between the two of you. And the only way you can actually begin to bridge that wall is by digging deeper inside. Right? I listen to what the guitar, suppose I'm the sarangi player, I'm listening to the guitar player play. I don't know his idiom, I don't know his genre. All I'm going to do is listen to the notes. Ultimately, whether you're jazz or folk, it's those same notes that you're playing, right? So you got to dig in, I got to go inside me, and automatically what it does, when something works, 2, 3 things happen. The first thing is my own sound becomes richer because now I've dug in and found something new. The second is that immediately I have a sense of achievement. I have a sense of self-worth that goes up, right? So the collaborative component, in fact, has been key to Jodhpur effect. In fact, like Serendipity, but our work, we are a producing festival. You know, we curate every single thing. When I present between 180 to 350 Rajasthani artists at the festival. But we also present between 100 to 200 international and national musicians. We don't flag this up, but we are probably India's largest international festival by number of artists, musicians. Sorry, I know you are concentrating on time, but I just need to say this. So the collaborative thing is key. Let me tell you what happens. We collaborated with the Edinburgh International Festival one year. We presented at the opening of the National Museum of Scotland, which had been shut for 10 years. We presented something called the Legendary Music of Rajasthan, some, very senior artists. At that time, there was somebody who was the artistic director of Celtic Connection, which happened in Glasgow, who only knew Indian music to be classical Indian music. He never heard of anything called folk. Somebody told me, get in touch with him, ask him to come. He came by train to Edinburgh on the very last show, saw it, and that resulted in a 3-year engagement where the Minister of External Affairs of Scotland came over to Jodhpur Riff, right? And she was there with the Maharaja of Jodhpur to sign this contract. So I think we talked about soft power earlier, etc., but it begins really with that musician,
Right.
With
financial sustainability and income for the musician.
It's key, I got a call yesterday. Somebody's opening a new store in Delhi, a clothing store. It's some 18,000 square feet or some massive thing. And they wanted some musicians. So I said, what do you want to do? He said, we want a 3-hour concert. We want 15 Rajasthani folk artists playing for 3 hours. So I said, wow, how much are you going to pay them? He says, 50,000. So when we're talking about income, here the artists who are in Belfast, 2 of them right now, they had 1 gig day before yesterday, 1 yesterday, and 1 tomorrow. Each one is coming back with £1,500, right? Sure. When I took artists to the Lincoln Center, I had 4 artists there. Each one came back. We did one evening concert and 1 dawn concert, right? 2.5 lakhs each. So why would the artists not want to go abroad? The challenge we have, and it came up in the conversation earlier, the problem that's happened, it was of course being spoken about the craftsperson. But even with music, ultimately what has happened to the folk artists, they are interested in karikram. They are not interested in nourishing their own work, because in nourishing their own work, there is nothing to gain in their minds. So why teach the youngster? I mean, I have lots of stories, I should shut up now. But I think what we are talking about is, there's this word which I never fully understand. It's poignant. And it's sensitive and it's painful. It's great to
but
hear.
Hopefully there'll be some creative policy
Well, yeah, I was just going to say.
In the making that's going to alleviate this.
And I've never done it publicly, but I do want to thank Sanjoy.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting when Sanjoy first came on board for the Jaipur Literature Festival, Jaipur Literature Festival.
All right.
I was the director of the Virasat Foundation. I drafted the contract that brought you in. And if you remember, we worked together for the first 2-3 years. But Sanjay has been remarkable, and I just want to acknowledge.
We all agree on that one. And we'll move on to Brinda. You all mentioned something about gender in the arts. And Brinda, in 2019, an avid learning panel, Women Innovators in an Emergent Era, in this very room, you mentioned that men rule the arts and culture world, and only 3 or 4 women succeed for every 9. Do you think this has changed over the past years?
Definitely, I think it has changed. I think, forget women, I think even transgenders are doing so well. So it's a good thing, of course. This year at the festival, we had a whole section on trans people, and we had panels, we had discussions, we had photographs, we had art, we had all of that, and we had a special section for that. And it was really a success. And in all these years, I don't think we ever thought we'd be able to do that. I think times have changed. And in my opinion, women always did well. And the women who did well did really well. That's what I mean. And yes, of course, it also depends on what kind of encouragement we've received, and, some of us have had it very easy. I would say I've had it very easy. I've had, great family support. I've had all of that, and so it hasn't been difficult for me, but yes, I think when I look at things generally, it has changed. Some of the sections of our festival, I would say, especially in something like dance, I think women have always dominated. But yes, when I told you last time, I remember that I talked about even something like food, or the chefs who came to Kala Ghoda, they were mostly men. And yes, it has become a lot more women now, but I still think male dominance is there, yes.
But your whole team is mostly women except
Most
for
of
me.
yes,
But
that's
anyway,
right.
Smriti, I'm going to go to you about funding. Creating these large, massive festivals, I mean, it's a Herculean task. Talk to us about the trials and tribulations of raising funds for it. I mean, from corporates to governments to even the diplomatic corps.
We're changing our name. We're no more an arts festival. We'll be Serendipity Festival. I think we'll raise a lot more money if we just change our name. If we call ourselves an incubator, we'll raise a lot more money. I think it's very difficult for people to understand what arts does. We got invited by the city of Birmingham to do a festival in Birmingham next year. So Serendipity is going to Birmingham. 10-day festival. Ruchira knows that. We have a meeting soon. But people want to give money. You know that. But people want to give money. Like, it's not like I've had the same challenges I've had in India for the past 10 years. It takes one call, and they're like, yes, we're going to help you. And if I can't give, I'll find someone else, because they value culture. That has to change, Asad. I mean, Mr. Munjal has now told us it's over. Do what you can with what you raise, which is obviously fair enough for any institution.
But since this is, about policy changes and recommendations, I mean, you all of you all work very closely with you work with the government in Goa. Brinda works with the BMC, who's fantastic. We've told Abha, obviously, for all your projects. Divya, obviously, in Rajasthan. I mean, what are the key challenges that you all have faced, and what are some of the opportunities, and what policy recommendations? Because this is the end, Lily Pandey is sitting here, so she's going to champion the changes you'll want to see, because we are a little short of time and I want to take questions. So let's just talk about...
Sure. I mean, I can start really quickly in terms of what the government of Goa has given to us. They too face challenges. Like you were saying, it's very difficult to make policy. They've been trying to make policy for one window festivals that Sanjoy and we spoke about many years ago on how can Goa actually flourish. Their tourism is what supports them. Panjim is full in December. Everyone's happy, but there's no policy around it. They're trying. It takes time, like you said. But it'll be interesting if festivals are supported by the state. I mean, they want to support. All the IS officers, all the government officials have never said no to me, but they don't have a policy around it. I just feel that if we can expedite that a little bit, it'll benefit the state and the economies for sure.
Brinda, anything?
So I think one of the reasons why Kala Ghoda Arts Festival has survived all these years is because we've not depended on the government. But that has to change. I think the government has to support festival like that, because now it has also reached that stage where the government doesn't have to do anything except give money, frankly. It's that kind of a festival. And permissions have gotten, it has become much better, as I said. So that's not very bad now, not very difficult. And as soon as you go to the office, they kind of welcome you, and the government welcomes you and says, yes, tell us what we can do. And they really do help us a lot. That has changed a lot. But as you said that you are going to Birmingham and there are people who want to give money, I don't find that very easy. I think money is very tough. I think sponsorship is very, very tough, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. Earlier, we used to have a sponsor, Times of India or Hindustan Times. We had had a media sponsor, and we never had to worry about that. And we thought that programming was so difficult, permissions were so difficult. So every kind of stage, there are different problems. And now I think we are facing the problem of sponsorship is a big
But
issue.
you did well last year.
But we did all right. We did okay, but it took a lot of work. Yeah. I'm sure you know that, Sanjay. That is the hardest part of the festival.
Divya, I'm not going to ask you about that, but there's one very important thing I forgot to ask you about was about AI. You know, it's transforming the landscape of music, and at the same time, you know, it's playing a crucial role in even preserving traditional arts and safeguarding cultural heritage. So how do you look at the future of folk music in this time of generative AI?
You know, AI, not just for folk music, but for everything is this kind of, you know, look at the writers protesting in Hollywood, right? Why do that? You spoke about IPRS earlier, you know, copyright, etc. We spoke about tagging. Why talk about tagging in the time of AI? Why talk about it, right? Because there is a danger, there is a real danger that already somebody whose livelihood is threatened, it can get much worse. I mean, the funny thing is at the festival from year one, that is 2007, we don't play...
It's not so much about the festival, it's the Rajasthani folk music.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. Right. Yeah. But I'm saying even at the festival, we don't play any recorded music. From day one, it's 100% live, one. But related to that is our best promotion is the live musician. Last Sunday, there is a museum here in Mumbai called the Museum of Solutions. If you go to their website or to Soundrise, we did a gig there, and people said this was great because it was so real. What does that mean? I think the point you're making is that what does it mean for the folk artist with AI? It's scary at base. Because unless there's some kind of either regulation, because the nature of commerce and the nature of market, it has no skin in the game beyond a point, if I can put it there. So the commercial aspects of music, they don't care what happens to the folk musician, right? They're interested, okay, what can I do with it? If they get them, if the government can get them to put some skin into the game, okay, yes, the commerce, yes, the market, but what about that guy? Then I think AI can work to their advantage. Otherwise, they're done for. Not in a, you know, they won't survive kind of thing. But
I
why
mean, there
AI?
was All About Music conference just now, and you know, the AI has been front
but there
and
was
center.
nobody in the folk space at All About
no,
Music.
that's what I'm asking. That's the
Right.
question for you, because I did the
it's
opening
about commerce.
panel.
See, the nature of commerce is that. But the other thing is that if you don't support the live, let AI do whatever it's doing, right? And that's really, I think people misunderstand the word patron, at least from the earlier panel. The word patron was a defender. The patron was a protector. He was not a funder. The funder was always the people. So you get it half right when you say that you want people to pay for something. Who is protecting that artist? Sorry?
Government.
Yeah, so government is patron. Government cannot get away from that responsibility, which is why, to date, 17 years, we have not taken any funding from government. Because government has no skin in the game, unfortunately. You are now talking, what you spoke today was very, very good, Lily. Very good. I was very, you know, I don't know if people know this. Why are our institutions called academies? Why are they called academies? Anyone know? Because there's nothing in our cultural policy about the creation of new work. Nothing. Cultural policies of the 50s. It's about preserving this thing which the British destroyed over the last 200 years. Let's bring it back. Let's just perpetuate the same thing again and again. And who sits at the bottom of the rung is the folk artist.
True.
Right? So sorry, I'm just so impassioned about this.
Let's just do one thing. We've got 5 minutes left. Let's get, ma'am, just give her a mic. Let's start some quick questions.
Well, my name is Shafali Frost, and I'm a musician. But you know, what you say goes to the heart of me. Because COVID has annihilated so many of these wonderful generational artists who now in Delhi, there's a whole area called Lakshmi Nagar, where people, khasabs who I work with, live. They're now selling sabzis. Some of them are now begging, because during COVID for 3 years, there was nothing. And at that point, the government hadn't stepped in to say, okay, like, you know, in England, we had these bursary programs, etc. So now they are telling their children, don't go into the arts. So that 4, 5 generations of learning is now being dissipated.
Right.
Which is something that we really need to work on.
Sure. Just let's keep these to questions, okay, guys, because we want to hear the whole. Yeah.
Just a quick response. You know, you're talking about lack of support. Let me tell you about support doing that. Earlier this year, the government of Rajasthan came up with a scheme. They said they were going to contribute 5,000 rupees to folk artist performers towards their instruments. The sarangi cost 25,000 rupees, and the kamaicha costs almost 28,000 to make because it's completely handmade from scratch. Now you get the folk musician 5,000 rupees. What are they going to do? They said, "Wo harmonium de sakte hai na." Now this is government support for you. Now when we talk about cultural mapping at one end, I think it's a great thing to do, but to what effect? What are they going to produce if you take away the sarangi and say, "Here's a harmonium," right? Are we going to make harmonium the national instrument of India, which is originally a French instrument?
I think,
But anyway.
Lily ji and then Sadhna.
Just a positive comment. I think during COVID, Tamil Nadu government, Kerala and Orissa government really reached out to the artists in COVID. Systematically, it was government and private partnership. Just a positive note.
And lots of private institutions.
No, but government and private partnership was Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Orissa government. It really worked to the grassroots level. As much as we could. You know, the ocean was so wide.
Right. Lily ji?
Yeah, so since I'm the only one representing the government of India over here, I must come to the defense of the government and clarify. No, definitely. Thank you very much. And it is just to clarify a few things. Now, first of all, during COVID, because the last point always gets picked up, even the government of India came up with a lot of help and a lot of support. Ministry of Culture reached out, and we did try, because we understood that the venue-based performances had dried up, and this was, hitting everybody very hard. As far as patronage of arts is concerned, we have the academies, we also have the zonal cultural centers, and they look at, the zonal cultural centers, which look very particularly after the folk artists and folk art forms. And we have the Rashtriya RSMs, the Rashtriya Sanskriti Mahotsavs, where opportunity is afforded to the folk artists. And we have 7 of them, very beautifully organized, to cover the length and breadth of the country. What I was trying to say when we spoke about the National Creative Economy Scheme is the need to reorient the thinking, to move away from only the patronage model and to think of economic sustainability of our cultural professionals and creative practitioners. And that is also the need of the hour. So instead of just giving them grants, which are doles, and which, because these are grants and because government does not have an inexhaustible supply of funds, have to be very, very limited in nature. So it is necessary to give them an enabling environment, a policy ecosystem, and give them business support measures where they can think of bringing themselves up to a level where they can avail these opportunities, either the market forces, which are private, or other government schemes which require you to be at a mature level of entrepreneurship. So that was the point we are making. And safeguarding dying arts remains the driving force of any policy architecture within the government of India. Thank you.
For that. Just keep the question really brief, please.
Right. So a trend I've noticed in the recent past is that artists have to pay for their slot, but the audience is pro bono. They don't have to pay for a ticket. This happened in a Shivratri dance festival in Madurai. And I was disappointed because as a performing artist, I was supposed to pay 2,000 rupees. And I was not earning at that time, I was studying. So asking my parents for such a big amount was diabolical in itself.
Sure.
Is there any advocacy policy that we can put out, or is there any support for whistleblowers that we can put in place for...
Divya, you seem to be addressing this. Or do you want to address it?
I mean, it's strange.
Yeah.
You should have said no.
You should have said
if
no,
I was there, I would have said no, I will not pay for my slot. I literally would have, I wouldn't have...
Unless you're getting paid and paid back.
Yeah, because it's not okay. Every artist needs to be paid. The level needs to be decided. It's an institutional decision on what you pay, how much you pay. That is based on how much the institution has funding for, but you can never ask an artist to pay to perform. And I think that's just
I think times are also changing a little. People are realizing their value. 2 last questions.
Thank you. Thank you for this brief slot. So, I've been thinking since the last panel about sort of creating synergies between
different sectors and what the government itself is doing. I'm really focusing on what they're doing at, maybe in the cultural sector, tying it up with the tourism sector. And I'd like to bring in another sort of spoke in this wheel. And this is coming from my own background as an academic. This new initiative that the government has launched of Indian knowledge systems. I don't know how many of you have actually, we
The
might
question,
be a little
ma'am,
bit,
if you could.
yeah, we might be a little skeptical, but a lot of impetus for the Indian knowledge systems has been about the various Indian arts and training and, all the promotions and publicity events were centered around some kind of performance-oriented traditions and all of that. So I was thinking if this synergy can be created with academia as well, and I've always been tom-tomming that that's something that's out. So, and then we sort of have more of a bottoms-up approach, from the students and, from all of these
working
education
closely with
sector.
academia. That's
that's
sure.
the
I think that happens,
crux.
right?
And not simply working, but acknowledging that things are also happening in that sector. So thank you so much.
But academia is a big part of, even there's also the
Not
whole.
in this conversation. I couldn't spot anything in this conversation.
No, actually,
This is a question for the government. I mean,
Yeah.
This is a question for IBCA and Ministry of Culture, not so much for this panel.
Yeah.
So maybe we can have a separate conversation.
Yeah. Just Joanne, one last question, and then
One of the...
quick question,
one-
guys.
One of the, I won't exactly say this is a question, but during COVID, ANAD it's an NGO which supported artisans by providing them a daily minimum amount like 1,000 rupees so that they could just tide their expenses and saved a lot of families and the craft also. So in subsequent to that, they had this equals. And this is one of the things that really struck me. It's an equilateral triangle. And one of the main factors was the people. The patronage was the emphasis on perhaps policy, on the artist, the creative, and third is all of us.
One last question there, and then we'll
Hi,
just wrap up. Yeah.
I'm Kevin. Yep. I had a quick question on impact reports of the festivals. Do you generate impact reports not just of the festival, but the impact on its environment? So the impact on Goa, the impact on Kalaghura, and the impact on
we
Jodhpur.
had the last one with KPMG. We had one with Artex. Rashmi is sitting there. We started with her. And actually there's a problem. When people look at impact reports of festival in India, they don't know how to actually quantify what they research. So we've, in the past 3 years, developed our own matrix. Because when we go to boardrooms to say, give us CSR money, they're like, tell us, if I had to give injections for polio or drops of polio, how does it equate to your impact in culture? So we've actually gone down the SGDs, we've looked at our own ESG goals, and we've made our own matrix that I can completely quantify. So this is the pilot project for this year. Hopefully, we'll be able to give you a structure that everyone can use and fight boardroom battles for funding.
Yeah, we've also started doing that ourselves. There was a time where we never had to bother about these things, but now it's become so important to the sponsors, I feel, more than anything else. I mean, I can confidently say that we have 2 million people at the Kalaghura Arts Festival. And we are counting them. We've been counting them. And we have 400 programs. We have all those other things that you asked about, sustainability and
Sorry,
all those
my question wasn't about the attendance to the festival, but the impact on
the impact as well.
around it.
The impact as well.
Yeah, we can send you a report format.
Divya's going to just do the last comment. So.
I think the interesting thing is, for us, it's not about the sponsor, it's not this, but where did Mamme Khan come from? The first time he played in Bombay as a solo artist, I presented him at Blue Frog. Where did Kutle Khan come from? The first 3 years, Kutle Khan, Chugga and Natho, when they were out traveling, Jodhpur Riff was supporting their flights. Where did Bhauri Devi come from? Where did Savant, where all the Rajasthani artists from the Coke Studio come from? Now today, when I want to tell my story about what this festival has done for Rajasthani folk artists over the last 20 years, I have nothing to show for it. Because we did it, and they went on, and somebody picked them up, and something happened, right? So I think track the history, the documentation. Impact is part of it, very critical part of it. But I want to just pick up on what she also said, because I've just had a conversation with Rashmi as well. She's given me that report that they did for you all, because I think it's in the public domain. And I'm very interested in that, because it's become critical. It's part of what Sanjay was asking Lily. is that in the census, please do it. In the economic survey of India, you get the number of actors and filmmakers. You don't get folk artists or artisans. It's just not there in the economic survey of India. So what kind of impact are we really wanting to acknowledge and address, right? It's huge.
On that very happy note, it's been a very interesting conversation. I mean, festivals are the heartbeat of many cities and towns, and have actually, regenerated, rejuvenated, provided lots of livelihood. In Kalagora, there's so many buildings and things that have been restored thanks to the festival, so many statues. But thank you guys for all that you all are doing and being such great friends and talking when I'm talking. Just kidding. I mean, keep up the great work. I love working with all of you all, and you all are, really pushing the envelope.